And let's turn our attention to the Arizona State Sun Devils, one of the four Pac-12 schools, former Pac-12 schools that move into the Big 12 this season with Chris Karpman, the publisher of our Arizona State site right here on the 24/7 Sports Network. Chris, thanks for taking time to join us. I know it's busy right now with camp. How much access do you have with camp?
Fantastic, actually. Surprisingly good. And we're really lucky. Kenny Dillingham lets us watch 80 to 90% of practices.
Wow.
Yeah, we just can't shoot any 11-on-11 or 7-on-7. And we can't report on injuries unless coaches have discussed them. Those are sort of the two main things that we're asked to be aware of. And as long as we do a good job of that in the media, they've been extremely accommodating.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Where are the Sun Devils at this point in fall camp?
They're a deeper team than last year for sure. In fact, quite deep in certain spots historically. You look at running back, they're 4 or 5 deep. Safety, they have 5 really good players. Linebacker, I think, is very much upgraded and deep. So they're trending in the right direction. It's hard not to after a historical 2-year bottoming out of ASU football, something that's never happened in modern history. I think the coaches have done a good job of rebuilding this. They have 78 out of 84 scholarship players were not a part of this program 2 years ago.
Wow.
So stunning, total rebuild. Still a lot of questions. Sam Levitt's going to be the quarterback, fairly confident. They haven't announced that yet. He's had a pretty good camp, but he's young and developing, and that's going to take some time settling in. Cornerback, I think, is very much a question mark after losing their top 3 guys from last year. But the trend line is good. They're not going to go out there probably and be one of the better teams in the conference, but I think they'll be very competitive.
Well, just stability at the quarterback position for ASU seems like it will help tremendously after what they went through last season. What is the key strength of this offense?
Yeah, I think their skill positions are quite good. Running back Cameron Scadaboo coming back. He was a finalist for the Paul Horning Award last year because of his ability to play under center and even punt when they needed him to do that, in addition to catching the ball well out of the backfield. He's lighter and leaner and in better shape this year. And DeCarlos Brooks, his top backup last year, who battled injuries, including a punctured lung. The ASU had just a ton of injuries. He's also in better shape. And wide receiver, even though ASU lost Elijah Badger, Jordan Tyson has really come on. 2 years ago, he was the top receiver at Colorado as a true freshman, but then he had an ACL injury that really took a long time coming back from, but now he looks really great. Jake Smith, having been at Texas and USC and now back to ASU and having to sit out last year, he's very talented at wideout. Melquan Stovall, the returning slot receiver. They got a bunch of players there. At tight end, I think they hit a home run in the transfer portal with Shalom Mateer coming in. Didn't work out at Colorado. Last year, he led Cincinnati with 5 receiving touchdowns. So he's already been pretty good in the Big 12. So everywhere, I think, at the skill positions, excluding quarterback, they're in very good shape. And then their offensive line had so many injuries last year, more than I can remember in the last 20 years. And their interior with Lee Fautanu, who will be probably one of the better centers in the Big 12, and Ben Coleman's at least a mid-level left guard. So their interior is very good. Tackles a little bit more of a question mark.
Okay, what is the biggest concern on offense? Those tackles, quarterbacks? What is it?
Left tackle and quarterback, right? And those are 2 of the most important positions on the field. And that's part of the reason why you're going to have expectations be a little bit muted for ASU. I got to say, though, Sam Levitt has not thrown hardly any Jeopardy balls in 11-on-11 action out there through 13 practices, which is the most important thing, right? If you don't give the ball away, and then he's very mobile and athletic. He can scramble to move the chains on third downs when teams are playing man coverage. So there's things I like about him. He's got a big enough arm to get you down the field, to keep defenses honest as well. But the youth and experience, he's never managed it at this level. Accuracy not always to the degree that it should be, and he's probably going to turn the ball over in some key situations. Left tackle, biggest question mark probably. They got Emmett Boley, a 6th year or maybe a 7th year senior, actually back from a catastrophic ankle injury last year, battling right now against Hawaii's starting left tackle from last season, Jalen Atkins, who Jeff Atkins. He's okay, I would say. And then Bram Walden's a guy who's an option. The biggest issue that they had was that Jalen Clem, who was probably going to be the starter at left tackle, he's out due to a health issue, and there's no timetable on his return.
Okay, let's flip it over there. What's the defense look like this year for the Sun Devils?
Well, again, I think their depth in through the middle of their defense is quite good. They have 5 or 6 D tackles. This is where they lost a lot of guys last year from Deshaun Mallory and BJ Green transferring to Colorado. And it was like, okay, are they going to be able to hold up? But Dyron Reynolds, their D-line coach, told me the other day he feels very confident about their ability to stop the run. CJ Fight, Jacob Kangaika, they added Zach Swanson from Texas, and Jeff Clark from Louisville is a twitchier interior guy. And then at end, between Clayton Smith and Prince Dorba and Elijah O'Neal, who's come on a lot this year after being a 4-star junior college transfer of the prior class, they have pass rushers. They're going to be able to play in the backfield, which is important in this Brian Ward defense. I think their linebacker, one of the best additions on the team, is Keyshawn Elliott. He had 111 tackles last year at New Mexico State. And he's, according to Dillingham, pound for pound, the best athlete on the field. So that's a major development. They have several others at linebacker who are good at safety. Shamari Simmons was their team and defensive MVP last year at the free position. He's back as a senior. They have Xavier Alford, who had to sit out last year as a second-time undergraduate transfer, who looks like a really good player as well. He had 2 interceptions for USC playing against ASU 2 years ago as a freshman. So through the middle, I think they're good.
Okay. Is corner the biggest concern on the defense side of the ball?
For sure, because they lost their top 3 guys from last year. Ed Woods transferring to Michigan State after the spring really hurts them. Ro Torrance and then D Ford were their other 2 guys that started a lot of games last year. And they didn't replace those guys with anyone in the transfer portal post-spring. They did add Javon Robinson from Washington State. He was their number 3 corner. They got LT Welch from LSU. He was a backup there, but he's had a pretty solid camp. And Keith Abney's a young player. He's a true sophomore who's looked reasonably solid. I do think that they're probably going to give up more big plays than they'll need to in order to be one of the better defenses in the conference. But again, they don't have that many weaknesses, surprisingly so, for coming off of a 3-win season. We'll have to see if they hold up as well against the run as they seem to think that they will. Okay.
Coming off that 3-win season, what defines a successful season this year for the Sun Devils?
Well, I think progress. They're not going to – I'd be surprised if they win 7 or more games, partly because – the schedule is very difficult. They play the top 5 teams in the Big 12. Wyoming is a tough non-conference team to open with. Mississippi State second that's difficult. Traveling to Texas State, the scheduling of that was a bad decision when they did that years ago, because that's almost like a 50-50 game. And then they have to go to Oklahoma State and Kansas State sort of late in the schedule. And they don't play any. They play like only 2 or 3 of the bottom 5 or 6 teams in the Big 12. So you have to have that framing. And then the other thing about this team, Tim, is the culture was so bad that was inherited by Dillingham, and they hadn't really want or understood how to win. There's going to be a lot of close games when you don't have that culture. And then on top of that, you have a redshirt freshman quarterback probably who hasn't done it before. That makes winning those tougher games harder. So that said, I don't think the coaches are going to be happy if they're shy of bowl eligibility, given that what I talked about earlier with the talent and the depth that they possess. My right now inclination is they'll probably be a 5 or 6 win team.
Okay. What happens if they fall short of that? What went wrong? Probably
Sam Leavitt did worse than expected, which would be a really bad sign, because last year in the rebuild process, ASU added, of course, Jaden Rashada, who transferred to Georgia, Drew Pine. It didn't work out as hoped. Jacob Conover was another quarterback transfer, didn't work out. So if you're Kenny Dillingham, given what you've already accomplished with quarterbacks in your sort of career, that's propelled you to getting this opportunity, right? As the youngest Division I head coach, that's what he's been able to do at different stops with quarterbacks, including Bo Nix most recently, revitalizing him and helping Oregon to accomplish what it's been able to the last couple of years. Dillingham really needs this quarterback transfer class to work out for him, and Sam Leavitt by far has the best chance of showing the promise to be able to do that. So that's number one. And then I think just handling late game situations well, which always gives you a swing of a few games here and there. And the third thing I think is really important is that Brian Ward's defenses historically have generated a lot of turnovers. Yeah. I think 1.7 per game on average, quite high. Last year, ASU was one of the worst teams in the country at taking the ball away from opponents. In college football, you got to have a good turnover margin if you're an average team in order to have a pretty good season.
Absolutely. Every schedule seems to have that game, that point where it could turn on that outcome of one game. Is there a linchpin game on the schedule where Arizona State picks up momentum or loses momentum depending on the outcome?
I've thought about this a lot because in prior years, I've really identified that game a lot more easily than this year. But I think given the nature of the more difficult non-conference schedule, and then opening with Texas Tech on the road, which is going to be a more difficult game, I really think that for the Sun Devils, they need to have some sort of success out of the gate, more so than some midpoint area that I have been able to identify, because quite easily they could be 1-3, which then the mustard's off the hot dog, and you're risk losing the all the stuff that you've built up over this last year and a half, this reservoir of positivity and the energy and all that stuff. So I really just think that ASU needs to win 2 of its non-conference games and at least play well going to Texas Tech on the road and not be worse than a 2-2 start in order to give itself the best hopes of putting together what would be considered a successful season.
Okay, time to put it on the line here. What's your predicted record for the Sun Devils after the regular season is done?
Yeah, as it stands now, I'm going to say 5-7.
Okay.
It's a little bit of I'm probably being a little bit conservative just because you never know about additional injuries or other things that could happen over the next couple of weeks, and want to see more with the quarterback development. But I would say 5 wins, show some progress. They'll have most of their players back in 2025. And I think that they will be probably a top half of the Big 12 team at that point.
I'm telling you what, after those 3 non-conference games for the Sun Devils, you're going to know an awful lot, won't you?
No doubt.
That's incredible scheduling. It's weird how that falls. Sometimes you just catch them at the wrong time. K-State did that with Tulane a couple years ago, unfortunately. Chris, thank you so much for the preview of the Arizona State Sun Devils.
My pleasure, Tim.